Hi folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about 5 retro objects, some of which were ahead of their time but didn't quite capture the public's imagination or the market to make them successful. Um, Now the first one was a must-have in every home of the 60s, 70s and 80s, and that was the rotary or dial-up telephone. Yes, this required the use of your index finger, which you placed in a numbered circular hole. You then dialed clockwise, waiting for the disc to come back again, and thereby, after you dialed the area code and your phone friend's or relative's phone number, voila, you could speak to them from the comfort of your own living room or hallway or wherever else the BT engineer had installed your device. So, before voicemail came in, which was sometime later, if somebody called you, you had no idea who it would have been. So you'd have spent more of your time ringing relatives and friends saying, "Did you ring me a few minutes ago?" 9 times out of 10, they'd say, "No, it wasn't me." And you might sometimes be forever lost as to who the heck had called you, one evening, probably when you're watching Bullseye on British TV. So there you go. Number 5, the rotary or dial-up telephone. So at number 4, we have the Sinclair C5. Now, this was brought to us by a British electronics and computer pioneer, Sir Clive Sinclair. At the height of the home computing revolution, he brought us the ZX80, which you could order from the post, and provided you got your wiring and soldering correct, you had a fully functioning operational home computer. So then he brought us the ZX81, a step up from the ZX80, did quite well. And eventually he did hit the big time with the ZX Spectrum. It was a wildly successful home computer. So in 85, Sir Clive Sinclair brought us the C5, which was technically an electrically assisted pedal-driven tricycle. Now, as you can see from the pictures, it wasn't aesthetically, pleasing to the eye for a lot of people. If you wanted to reverse, you had to physically get out of this vehicle and you had to turn it around by hand, all 45 kilograms of the vehicle with the battery. If you went up an incline, the motors unfortunately had a tendency to overheat and burn out. Some people said it was like too easy to steal, and you've got a price tag of, back in the day, £399, which would have been £1,100, which was quite a lot of money. So, unfortunately, the C5 did not do very well, and it virtually marked the end of Sinclair's reign. Sadly, at one point, retail chains that were selling the C5, were dropping them as low as £139, which was to offset some of the debt. But he was in financial crisis by that time, and unfortunately, the C5. Although it gained a bit of a cult status over the years, it meant the end of the company, which was quite sad. But number 4, Sinclair C5, ahead of its time, but unfortunately, not a great investment for the company. Next on our list, at number 3, is another product by Sinclair, and that was the TV80, or the Pocket TV, that was, as it was known. Now, fantastic, wonderful idea. The 80s, to me, they were a brilliant time when people were just able to explore with technology and invention and just come up with stuff that was, pretty futuristic even for us as children and teenagers back then. But unfortunately, the TV80 or Pocket TV that it was known, 4 million was invested in it, and it only sold 15,000 units. Bit of a shame, really. I remember having a TV that wasn't a pocket TV, but the screen was probably, 7 inches, maybe 6 inches in diameter. So those sort of units did seem to sell well. But the pocket TV, no, unfortunately, people didn't warm to that. And as visionary as it was, and exciting, I used to think it was quite exciting having a pocket TV as a kid. It didn't do very well, which again, a bit of a shame for Sinclair, but nonetheless, a guy with vision and not afraid to experiment and push the boat out a bit, which I think is great. Now, at number 2, this next retro item was wildly successful. Immortalised in Cliff Richard's Wired for Sound, where Cliff skates around on roller skates. It's the Sony Walkman. I remember having one of these. I was chuffed to bits when I got that. But yeah, the Sony Walkman, started off with a cassette, eventually branched out into CDs. Within 10 years, basically, of the launch of the Walkman, they had sold, can you believe it, 100 million units. They held 50% of the US market and 48% of the Japanese market. How amazing is that? That's like big numbers. So yeah, the Sony Walkman, obviously, incredibly and wildly successful. I mean, I can remember the 80s. Pretty much everybody that you saw on a TV show or film, or people you saw about, had a Walkman of some description. Different array of colours. Some eventually had the AM FM radio. Then it obviously went to the CD version of the Walkman, eventually replaced by the MP3 player, the iPod, and of course the rest is history, really, isn't it? You can stream music via Spotify on your Android phone. What more is there to say, really? But the Walkman was a massive revolution in being able to hear your music wherever you went. Fantastic invention and a massive, massive success. Right, and finally at number 1 we have Laserdisc. Now you'd think this would be an amazing idea. Higher quality visual and audio for a movie. So Laserdisc, the actual discs themselves were about the size of a vinyl record. You'd place them into the disc player, and depending on the size and length of the movie, you'd watch one side. You'd then take the disc out, flip it over, and watch the rest of your movie. So Laserdisc, despite offering better visual and audio quality, did not do very well. In fact, at one point it only held 2% of the US market. Did very well in Indonesia and Japan, but unfortunately one of its disadvantages at that time anyway was the fact that it couldn't record. People used a VCR. You could record something and replay it. And by that time as well, when we look at the way things were progressing, DVD was already outstripping the sales of Laserdisc. I think Laserdisc lasted till about 2009, but yeah, it wasn't going anywhere. And of course, as we know, DVD, Blu-ray, they dominated the market and still do. So sadly, Laserdisc, didn't really have a future. It also had issues with the discs suffering from laser rot, where they'd become mottled and unplayable, a bit like a CD if you scratch it. So as good and as exciting as it was, Laserdisc just didn't capture the market, which was a shame. Anyway, thank you for watching this retro items, some of which did quite well, some of which have just morphed and changed into different things. And yeah, thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed it, consider subscribing and liking, and I appreciate your time. Thank you, folks. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.